the industry is getting more and more interested about alternative stores. The common denominator to all of them is that they want to get in right now and they want to understand what is the opportunity in front of them. And up until now, paid user acquisition for alternative applications was not necessarily a viable option. For the first time in the industry, we have an opportunity to run alternative user acquisition strategies that enable developers to benefit from both things, to put applications into the alternative stores and generate organic growth. We are in the midst of a big revolution in our industry, and the way they act right now will affect their revenues and their performance in the next several years.
What does it look like in the next few years? Is it a plethora of places, opportunities, and what studios aren't maybe seeing right now? So we talk a lot about alternatives arriving and what will we do when they are here, but actually they are here, and I'm here with Shalom, who is, I would say, not just because of your position at Digital Turbine that you're sort of a champion of this discussion, but you're also an expert because your panel really dealt into what do we do when, not when it happens, but it is happening. And some of the very interesting points there that were raised. What was your takeaway from that, or what was surprising for you? Because it was a challenging panel. They knew their stuff, but you were there too.
They definitely knew the stuff. And Peggy, we see that the industry is getting more and more interested about alternative stores, and some developers were testing in the past, some haven't tested at all. And I think that what's the common denominator to all of them is that they want to get in right now and they want to understand what is the opportunity in front of them, what kind of things that they need to prepare in terms of challenges, how they need to prepare the internal teams, and how. And this is a big discussion around the developer ecosystem. And in the panel, we discussed about what they need to do, how they need to integrate their applications within the different stores out there, and what kind of results they can expect. And eventually, this is a big shift in terms of mindset for app developers, because alternative stores are not necessarily a new thing. They've been in the industry in the past 10 years, but there is for the first time an opportunity to get much more from alternative stores because they're open for the first time also for tier one market. And those markets are now generating much more opportunities for the developers to generate more revenues out of them. Because up until now, most of them were in APAC, in different countries where the proposition of their revenues were relatively very small. And those developers that were a little bit burned in the past are now getting into this opportunity with a little bit more cautious mindset, and they are now trying to think how, if they're jumping into the pool, how they're doing that they will maximize the revenues and the operation internally for their teams and their revenues for themselves.
And you notice that. I noticed that also speaking with studios, it's sort of not a question of what are the pain points, but how do I deal with those pain points? So they're not a barrier anymore. So it's more, how do I do this? Because it's almost like the days of new channels. If we do this now, it's a blue ocean before everyone is in and sort of ruins the party or makes it very expensive or makes it very crowded. And that's the feeling I got here as well. So alone from the revenues, that's one way of looking at it. But that's the opportunity. What do you tell them when they're thinking about the opportunity, how they need to frame this, like what type of benchmarks or what type of timeline? Because it's something that doesn't happen right now.
Yes.
But if you get in right now, it will happen.
100%. I think that one of the most important topics to remember is that our ecosystem and our industry in the past decade and a half did not grow only because app developers put their applications into the store and generated organic downloads. It grew because we had in this ecosystem found a way to create paid user acquisition. And up until now, paid user acquisition for alternative applications was not necessarily a viable option. And technologies are changing right now. And for the first time in the industry, we have an opportunity to run alternative user acquisition strategies that enable developers to benefit from both things, to put applications into the alternative stores and generate organic growth, and in parallel do and build alternative user acquisition strategies with preload, with sideloading, and due to regulation changes around the world, those technologies enable final developers to grow the alternative user acquisition distribution, and that comes with a lot of benefits for app developers.
We had to take a time. It was a little bit creepy for a while, side loading. It was like, do you really want to do this? But that's changed. What are the other catalysts? Maybe because you're in the industry, you would be able to call them out so that we could say, yes, that is the turning point, or these are the real points that pave the way for what will be a robust economy.
So I think that, the way the developers making integrations and support those applications is a very important topic. So developers need to be minded of how they make integrations and how they support the updates and many different things that they have within the operation process. There are different things. We all speak about the why developers would go into the alternative source, and this is definitely a revenue economic benefit. If you can keep or can save 10% of your margin and that's a big benefit for many app developers out there. Not only the big ones, but also the medium and the small ones. Now, there are another layer, which is, if up until now you were able to sell an item to your user for $1, maybe now you can sell it for 90 cents. So, or maybe you can, keep some of this money in your pocket as a developer, as a margin. And there are strategies over here that each and every developer can think differently around. So some users would like to pay less. Some users would like to keep the same thing, but get maybe more life and more, features from the game. And developers can do A/B testing by analyzing very accurately which users will be relevant for what kind of proposition. And because they have the flexibility around the payments and about the economics, they're able to divide and conquer and give different propositions to different users, generating much more revenues, increasing their retention, and basically having much more flexibility around the audiences within their games, within the alternative store.
Perfect. Perfect, Shalom. I knew that you would have the answer, and you have framed it as a strategy. I think that's really important. We were thinking of it more as a tactic before. It was like an add-on, but now I'm hearing more the discussion that doing this right is having it as a holistic strategy and thinking about part of the UA strategy is
Sure.
part of this. So
we are in the midst of a big revolution in our industry, and the next several years will look completely different than the way they looked before. From the installment of applications, users will interact differently with apps and will install them differently, and therefore app developers need to understand that the next several years will embark different changes in the user's behavior environment, but also a lot of opportunities, and the way they act right now will affect their revenues and their performance in the next several years.
So I can't help but ask the question, because you have a very distinct, you have this view, even when I'm looking at you, in your eyes, it's like I can see it. So yes, share that vision. What does it look like in the next few years? Is it a plethora of places, opportunities, and what studios aren't maybe seeing right now?
Users will be able to download applications without necessarily going through the store. And there will be other players that will be playing a big part in this game, like the carriers that were left out in the past decade and a half from the gaming and the mobile in-app space. They were creating the devices, but eventually did not generate much as a result of it from this economy. So the future will be more of a democratizing the application and the store space. Instead of having only two main players, we will see more and more players in terms of stores, and we will see more and more payment services. So payment services that enable you a transaction of the in-app purchase will also grow. So we'll see that. We'll see competition that gets in. Competition creates innovation, and that will open up the market for reduction of prices and rolling the value eventually to the user, because competition will make it that the users will eventually benefit the most from their product. So this is what, in my opinion, will happen, and we will see more and more payment companies getting in different sorts of ways in the next several years, and there can be different localizations. In different countries can be different players that will be maybe stronger than others, but that's going to be very exciting to see how this finally duopoly is changing and getting more opportunities for the developers, for the service providers, and eventually to the users.
Well, that sounds fantastic, especially when you think about the data and things like the State of Mobile report from Sensor Tower. Great report, no problem with it. It's just, it's not that positive. You've told us about a much more positive future that we can look forward to. And I have to say, it's been a great conversation, everything that you've shared. Let's chat again to check what happens in the second half of the year to see that. But until then, thanks again, Shalom, so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Peggy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, if you're tuning into In the Groove on YouTube, well, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. It will allow you to stay up to date with the series, and not only that, enjoy the pure gold of knowledge and insights our guests bring to every episode.